Yo, ESPN 12 was sick. Hooker versus Poirier was one of the best fights I've ever seen. And if you haven't seen that fight and you are watching this right now, I suggest you go watch it. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to go watch it now. Fuck, I ain't doing no episode. Roll the credits. Fuck it. Roll the credits.
The fuck, bro? So he's doing this shit.
Okay, so we're doing an episode, it turns out. What's up, Rule? How you been today, man? Welcome to Game On.
Good. How you been?
Hey, amazing. What do you mean? High off of life. This was the most, I'm going to say this, and I don't know if it's because either A, every fight card is just getting that much better over time, or B, I'm just that guy like Joe Rogan. This is the best fight probably ever. So I don't know which one to go with, man, but I do get this feeling of just amazing matchups and fights that we're getting from the UFC. Would you agree we're in some kind of like weird era in a good way? I would say in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, no complaining off of this card for sure, both for, newcomers and experienced fans, man. But it's just, I'm trying to decide whether it's a matter of, are we really in a new era, or are we just like so deprived of sports that any little bit is exciting right now? But for sure, the card itself was amazing. That's without a doubt. But we'll have to see how things turn out in Fight Island to see if it's going to continue that way.
I mean, Fight Island is probably going to be, I mean, you know how that works, right? The big fight cards, you don't really know just what you're in for. You get all these big names. It could be like one of those movies where you have like an amazing cast and the movie's just shit, right? So I feel like these are just going to be the better cards. Like, we got to take them for what they are. They are that amazing. That's how I feel. Man, this was just an amazing, oh my goodness. I mean, you're talking about a fight card that started with, well, before it started, the prelims was already pretty nasty. You had that Pena-Worthy fight where this guy is clearly better at jiu-jitsu. And that's something I wanted to touch up on you quick. It's not on the official fight card. But think about this for a second. We always talk about how in jiu-jitsu it's harder to come back in a jiu-jitsu match. Like, if you're really, really outclassed in a jiu-jitsu match, because of the nature of it, it's hard to set up a submission if you're that much behind the curve of the other guy. If the other guy's not much better than you, he's going to see it coming. He's going to screw you over. So this was one of those situations where it didn't happen that way. Homeboy was actually doing his thing and winning the fight and completely. I mean, did you see how effortless he looked during that fight? His transitions were like, oh, this ain't shit for me. And all of a sudden, the other dude, after 3 rounds of complete domination on the ground, he was losing the fight. He just pulls off a guillotine to win the fight after being completely dominated. That to me was super impressive and to set a great tone for the rest of the night, because this card was amazing. So starting with the Woodson fight, what were your takes on the Woodson fight, man? I think you called it. I think you did.
Yeah, I mean, but all I remember is while watching the fight, I was just really impressed with Julian Erosa's boxing. I mean, the guy's angles were brilliant. He was just, changing levels, high, low, going to the side, liver shots, things like that. I mean, that's just the one highlight I keep remembering about that fight. But, Woodson obviously played to his advantages in terms of his reach. It was a pretty decent back and forth kickboxing match as well. But, obviously we saw it ended with a submission.
Yeah,
which was surprising because Woodson was the better ground guy throughout the entire match.
Yeah, and then it came down, and then he got submitted. Yeah. What was that choke officially? What did it go down as officially? Do you know?
Wasn't that the fight no, because wasn't that the fight where he was rear naked? Was that rear naked?
No, he caught him in a really, really. I just don't know the official name. I think it was a Darcy.
I mean, I think we talked about that in the episode before the fight. I think he keeps doing that Bravo choke that everyone's.
That's it. That's that weird name. Yeah. So it's like when I hear Bravo choke, I don't know why I think of gi jiu-jitsu, but this was definitely one of the most unexpected outcomes, right? Because we were seeing such great stand-up, the snap of the punches, and then all of a sudden, wham, submission, son, from the ground. And what a submission to see right after we saw the prelim submission too. So it was like a night where the tone was set for ground game, because we have that amazing submission on Pena from Worthy, and now we have this one on Woodson, right? Because he took the losing end of that exchange. And here's the thing. I will be fair with you, Rolo. You called it. You absolutely called it. You said this fight card was going to be one of stoppages. So all night we were counting. The rule counter. We had the rule counter up. We were like this: 1 stoppage, 2 stoppage. And the reality is that of all 6 fights, we gave you the benefit of the doubt because the reality was that there were 3 stoppages and 3 decisions on this card, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
But that last fight had no business going into a decision.
No, and it's not even so much about it being a decision that's the problem or the solution. It's just I called an exciting card overall. So even the ones that went to decision,
Shouldn't have.
You were invested the entire time for that fight because at any point you felt like, okay, these guys are gonna get dropped at any point. I mean, we'll touch up on that in the co-main event, which is definitely one of the cases it happened in. And then that Brendan Allen and Kyle Dawkins fight was also one of those where I just thought, okay, one's gonna get dropped any minute now.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. You called it 100%. You called a night of stoppages and just amazing excitement in all throughout the rounds. And we got a very busy night. So you were appreciative of the stand up against Woodson in this fight, and it was just impressive to see. The fight after that, if we're going in order, would have been I think it was the Asian,
Takashi Sato, Jason Witt.
Yep. And this fight went the way a lot of people thought. The dude had a nice 1-2, ended a KO, I believe, in the first round. How long did that fight go for since you got it pulled up?
47 seconds.
47 seconds. Damn.
Yeah, and I don't know Takashi Sato very well, to be honest. That's the first time I see him. And he left me nothing to analyze. Like, I have to go back and see his prior fights because he ended it that fast. So it's like, was it one of those fights where he just got lucky with his timing and location of his punches, or is he just that good? I mean, it was really impressive finish.
So yeah, we didn't see enough. We don't know. We don't know if exactly that's going to be something that he carries with him if his striking is that good. But at the end of the day, man, it's all it takes. It's a nice little 1-2 down the middle. And what's really interesting is that when that happened, all the tweets on the feed that were coming up through the screen, all of them were actually very much on the lines of, "Oh, finally we get Japan back on the map." Why do you think that happens? Why do you think Japan is needing to be back on the map? That's something I was thinking about that night. Like,
yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, I think one championship is a big influence. They dominate Asia. I mean, and even in terms of numbers, when it comes to fans, viewership, attendance, and stuff like that, they are bigger than the UFC, just on those numbers. So I think that's a big influence. I mean, if you're a Japanese fighter, who resides in Japan or even anywhere near Asia, if your salary is going to be fairly the same as a UFC contract, you're probably better off being able to train and travel close to home and instead of having to go half across the world every time you're going to fight, which is usually the case. I mean, let's be real, UFC events are 70% in the US with the occasional international match. And I think that plays a big role right now with one championship being so competitive.
Yeah, but the fact that you have a Japanese fighter getting a knockout and it takes, like, you don't see, for example, like, let's say one championship was from Brazil. You don't see when a Brazilian gets a knockout or submission, somebody going, "Oh, finally, Brazil's on the map in the UFC." Obviously, it's because of a representation issue, right? Like some kind of, I don't know. Do you think there's a drought from that part of the world? I mean, think about it. How many Chinese girls are there or Asians in that matter that are actually in the top 5 in each weight class? Like, it's really interesting to see that for being such a originator country or countries,
right,
in martial arts, how we see higher amounts of representation by ethnicity in other areas. Like, it's really interesting how I just found that really interesting. Somebody brought up the fact that, Japan's back on the map, and it was just a 1-2 KO in the 40 seconds in.
Yeah, I also heard that more of a fact that it was surprising that it was such a quick knockout in terms of, oh wow, like Japan's showing that they do have power. And I could kind of see that if you look at in terms of that culture, you don't really picture Japanese people as like strong, powerful people. Like, how think of like Icelanders, those power lifters are all just big, strong guys. And then you think of like Japanese baseball, they don't really celebrate the home runners. They celebrate the bunt and the speed runners, things like that.
Interesting.
But I feel like it's one of those things that you really be able to know if you can actually sit down and talk to someone who's raised in that culture. And maybe they just see martial arts differently there. Maybe since they appreciate more of like a heritage thing and an essential thing, maybe they don't really partake in too much of it as a sport nowadays. That's probably why you see less of them.
It could be. Yeah, no, that could be the case. I mean, I don't see an argument against that. I just think that it was interesting that a Japanese dude gets a 1-2 knockout early in the first round, and all of a sudden Twitter blows up with something about Japan. I was like, bro, are we that lacking of Japanese representation in terms of, like, not just the fact that they're in the UFC, but that are doing things like that in the UFC? And I guess that's the case. I didn't reflect on that enough. Like, you don't get enough stoppages, I guess. I don't know. But that to me was really interesting. And congrats, because that knockout was really clean. I mean, nobody saw it happening that quick. It was one of those like wham, bam, thank you, ma'ams.
Yeah, if you turned your head for a minute, you missed it. It was over.
Yeah, so Takashi Sato knocked out Jason Witt. That was huge, man, huge for him. And of course, that's the welterweight division. And I don't know what he's officially ranked, but I do know that he was the underdog. I mean, sorry, he was the favorite in that. Let me see. Oh, yeah, no, he was the minus 250. So yeah, he was the favorite.
Yep. No rankings for either of the fighters.
Yeah, I wonder who they put him up against next. You know, I don't know who the official top 10 welterweights are, and I don't know if he's even going to be getting a matchup like that. But just to see, keep your eyes out on Takashi. I think it's an interesting one. So look out for that dude. So Takashi, I said Takashi Sato. And next is the fight you were actually really, really, really excited to watch, which was the Brandon Allen and Kyle Daukaus fight.
Yep.
And you called it too. I think you called Allen, right? I think
I did call Allen. I did expect more of a finish. I didn't expect it to go the 3 rounds the way it did, especially with Kyle performing better than I thought. I thought maybe Allen would be a little more dominating, but Kyle definitely showed up. There was definitely a bunch of rounds that were his. He threw way more strikes, even though they're giving significant strikes advantages to Allen. Kyle threw most of the strikes. He had 3 takedowns in that fight. So it was pretty back and forth. So not what I expected, but Allen was able to finish it. It seems like the experience was able to win it for him in that one.
Which was the fight? Because now my memory is getting a little blurry. Which was the fight this night where a dude had some other dudes back for 4 out of the 5 minutes, and the judges gave the other dude the round? I think they were talking about that on ESPN, which I still find really interesting. I think it still shows that no matter how much we try to forget about the conversation, it's still here. The fact is, we have shitty judges. They got the fight right, and that's okay. So the overall fight was scored just fine and dandy. But the decision of giving someone a round that had back control for 4 out of the 5 minutes out of that round with nothing else significant going on, except maybe the other guy might have thrown a couple of punches when they were in the actual stand-up, to me, that still reigns an alarming feature that we need to fix. I think it's very important that the UFC can appeal, maybe not for the sake of an outcome, but they should be able to appeal a judge like, this judge just gave a fighter who had control of the back for 4 minutes of the round a lost round. That's super, super, super unnecessary. We can't have that in the UFC. I forgot which fight of the night it was here, but I do remember hearing that statistic that a judge gave a guy a round. So all the judges gave the guy the round. 2 of them gave him the round. There was a third judge who said, no, he lost the round. I think we should have some kind of process where we say, no, you can't judge, or you're under scrutiny of some kind, or we got to put you under some kind of microscope. Something's got to happen, I feel like, because think about it. If you let that judge in on a title fight, and he's willing to throw a title fight that hard, or any fight where he's like, oh yeah, the other guy had his back for 4 minutes, but he didn't do anything with it, or I don't know what hooks are in jiu-jitsu, so I'm not going to give him any credit for controlling him like that. It's like, bro, do you know what it's like? So long story short, I was pretty upset to see that still happening.
Yeah, no, and we even heard the commentators talk about it. Cruz himself, he was commentating this past weekend. He mentioned is that these referees don't appreciate positions in jiu-jitsu, and for what they think they see it's just 2 guys hugging. They don't realize that no, a guy there is working. He's doing something that is factoring in the fight. But we talked about this before. The solution is not the appeal process. The appeal process is going to complicate everything, both for the organization and for the fighters. The solution is just get better referees. I mean, we see it all the time in other sports where for a referee to be able to go into a playoff or a championship game, they track their history in terms of mistakes they've made. I mean, we've seen in baseball now with the replays. And they write those things down like, oh, this umpire's had 5 replay mistakes where he called the wrong call. Okay, you're not going to umpire a playoff game. And that's how it works. So why can't we, number one, why can't we get better referees? I mean, in other words, we have a bunch of retired fighters. We have a bunch of just jiu-jitsu practitioners all around the country that you can at least have, let's say, a kickboxing judge, a jiu-jitsu judge, and okay, let's say wrestling, boxing every once in a while, like during the mix. So like a variety of referees, and it's the collaboration of all their opinion of the fight that determines the winner. Solve that problem. And then the next, keep track of it. How many referees, how many times were you involved in a controversial fight? Okay, you're not going to be called upon for a championship fight. You just don't have a good track record. And I think that's what's going to solve it. But I don't know why the UFC hasn't put more pressure in the commissions for that.
That's one thing I'd love to look into. And if you know the answer to this, or you have articles that we can look into that we're just not doing now, leave it in the comments below, because man, I'm at a loss. I'm at a loss here. I don't know how it is that the UFC can't be like, okay, I'm not saying we're not going to use your judges. I'm saying give us better judges. It's that simple. And again, treat me like an idiot. I'm an uneducated, hardcore UFC fan, if hardcore MMA fan, but I am uneducated in that sense. Like, why is it that we allow for such stupidity to flow through on a constant basis and no one bats an eye? People only seem to care about these things when it affects a huge title fight, but by then it's too late. By the time you let this judge into a title fight, you've already screwed up. The idea would be, like you said, to filter that out. I just think that if we find a way to at least have, like you said, accountability, right? We're doing it with police. We can do it with UFC judges. That's all I got to say. I'm not that's all I'm going to say. Don't judge bad rounds, so take backs, no shoot, don't shoot. I don't know, whatever slogan you want to do for these bad judges, but yeah, man, that's
Every
just
ref has to have at least 3 stripes in their white belt jiu-jitsu, at least.
Yeah. You got to have
the requirements
for real, or yeah. Because think about it, who's refereeing any grappling tournament or anything like that? An actual grappler, somebody who knows something, right? The referees in the UFC, they obviously know a thing or two, but somehow the judges, the ones important of really crucial close fights, fuck off with them. That doesn't matter. That makes no sense to me, and I agree. I think there should be more pushback, and we're not seeing enough of it. But without going into that tantrum, because that could be its own episode, man. I swear we could talk about judges, and maybe we can do an episode on the research we do following that fight. Was it Gian Villante against? I might have butchered that, but the Maurice Green fight. To me, this was the most bizarre submission we've seen in a long time. Holla, what you think, man?
Yeah, that's a tough position for those who are not familiar with jiu-jitsu. I mean, pulling off an arm triangle from the bottom, that was just pure strength, I think. He didn't really have much leverage there. And he himself said in the post-conference, it seems that endurance was the major factor of him completing it. He felt how while Green was on top, he can almost feel him resting, and he took a break. And that's when he took the moment to, lock his arms in and press for that choke. And it was really impressive. Again, it was a fight that was going back and forth. One can even argue Green was winning it, and he pulled it off. And it was really sad at his post-fight interview was like really sentimental. He started crying and talking about like he could have lost his job tonight. And that really hit home.
Yeah, man. No, that interview afterward was just, I mean, you were laughing at some points because it was a mixture of seeing a grown man cry, a warrior cry,
a big guy cry.
You're talking about a heavyweight cry, like, but at the same time, the fact that he couldn't breathe either because he was so exhausted from that. So he was just like, I'm sorry. I'm like, is he okay? So what's he at? Like, imagine being out of breath and not being out of breath and crying. That guy's cardio is amazing. He could cry and be out of breath and still talk. But yeah, I was going to ask you this: do you think he caught him clean, or do you think that was a mixture of exhaustion on Villante's part?
I mean, again, just from the position, I picture myself trying to do that, and I don't think I can pull it off because normally for like some sort of submission like that from the bottom, there has to be a leverage aspect. Your legs are either pulling him one way and your arms the other way, and you're initiating some sort of crank or choke, like tying into the choke. But he was in a half guard, I believe, in the bottom. He cranks his neck back by putting his arms on his forehead, and I just feel like it was just 80%. Like if it wasn't for him being a strong guy, that wouldn't have choked most people out. There was no leverage.
I agree, but I also think, I mean, here's the thing. A lot of the commentators during the fight, or after the fight, I should say, were talking about how that was not a clean-looking submission. How it didn't look like Dominic Cruz had a good look from different angles, and he was like, I just don't see how that was. I don't see how that was a submission. I don't see how he had that locked in.
Well, it proves my point. Usually the dirtier submissions in jiu-jitsu are ones that were just brute strength. It wasn't because you really had them in anything proficient and tight. I mean, we see it all the times with guillotines. Sometimes guillotines aren't really locked in, but the guy is so strong, he's pretty much tearing your head apart that you have no choice. We also see it with things like armbar. He's not even armbarring you. He's more like twisting your elbow than actually hyperextending it. But again, the guy's just stronger than you. So it looks ugly, but it's working.
I guess the analogy here would be, did he catch him with anything that remotely, for example, if I catch you in a guillotine here and I got it tight and I've got, this under your neck and I'm actually choking you and it hurts. I mean, not just that it hurts, but you feel yourself going out, you tap. But what if I have you in a guillotine that's not as clean, but at the same time, because I turn your head into my, let's say the side of my chest here and I push your face against it and you're just extremely exhausted and you tap because you're trying to breathe and now you're literally sucking skin and you're trying to breathe. Could that be a possibility? I was just wondering because it didn't look, I've seen many triangles of like that happen. and it's still rare. I've seen many of them, but it's still like once in a long time. My point is that I've seen them and they've always looked tighter than that. This guy's didn't even seem like it had the leverage. It looked more of it had some stick to it, but at the same time, it was mainly like the guy lacking breathing. It seems. So you're saying no, it was probably a tight submission.
Well, Green made a good point in terms of taking advantage that Vellante was taking a break. Both, number one, it gave him the opportunity to sneak the arm in and lock it up, and two, Vellante just seemed to not have any more breath left because he was already gassed at that point. So when you're talking about tight or no tight, if you're already gassed, having a hard time breathing, and then you're just closing the airways just a tad bit, you can see how potentially a more uncommon tap would occur. And that's what Green believes had to happen. And again, I saw him lock it up. Again, yeah, you're right. It didn't look pretty. He's a strong dude. I think it was just brute force.
Brute force.
A little bit.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is, Maurice Green is a guy who I think has also had comeback submissions before. So this is something that is in his wheelhouse apparently now by record. My take on this whole fight is that I think it was incredible that Maurice Green even survived the barrage of ass-whooping punches he received. He took elbows to the head. He took and he got dropped hardcore. He came in with a Superman punch, right? He tried a fancy Superman punch, and he got countered. He flew in, and then Superman became like Batman in like a second. It's like, oh, I have no power. Bah,
and it has to be noted that so he got into his fight camp late for this fight, and it's Jackson Wink. According to what he's been saying, it seems he's going to stay there. It's going to be his permanent house now in terms of training. So that makes you want to keep an eye on him. I mean, now you're training at a gym like Jackson Wink with a finish like that. We might see big things from him coming up in the division.
I can't wait. And to think that he said he needed the win because his family was going through some trouble and that he was probably going to lose his job with the UFC if he didn't pull off a win and all these things. And you just think about the moment where he was actually getting rocked and ground and pounded. It looked over for him. And to think that he just he went from having to accept a loss that harsh to then not having a victory speech, which to me is just what fighting's all about. And it's just all the more why this card was just absolutely insane. Like absolutely insane. And I kind of want to – I don't know if ESPN interviewed Vellante after that. I think they just interviewed Green and then they fucked off. I don't think they interviewed Vellante after that.
Usually in these Vegas cards, they usually just been interviewing the winner at the end.
They need to do both, man. They need to do they need to be picky as to when they choose the second. Like I'm not saying do the second guy every time, but I am saying, for example, title fight, yes. Really amazing fight, yes. Right. One like this where it was like, why did he tap? Why did he tap? I feel like ESPN should be pressing on these interviews and be like, hey, get that guy on the podium real quick. I just got a few questions I need to ask. Right. I think
it would have been interesting to see whether it was a neck crank or actual choke that made him tap, because there was a crank aspect to it, but I couldn't tell exactly what made him tap.
It didn't look cranky and it didn't look choky. But yet it got the tappy. Anyway, so moving on to what some would argue, including ourselves here, as to one of the most interesting storylines this year in terms of uniqueness, right? Mike Perry said, fuck everything, like you said, and he pretty much said, for the next 3 months of my life, I don't need a fight camp. I don't need a coach corner, doctor, you name it. Fuck it. It's just me and my girlfriend. Mind you, before we give away the results, if you haven't looked them up already, when his girlfriend when he was hitting the pads, bam, 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 and his girlfriend was holding him, there was one video where she's like this.
Yeah, he's super short.
But even though she's short, she's holding him up so high that even though he's taller, he still has to punch up too high. It looks bad. I'm like, how is this training for a fight? Like, it looks really like something you can make fun of. Like, look at this.
I mean, if there's one thing I have to say is that I do have to apologize to him. He proved a lot of people wrong. He really did. I mean, he not only was his head was in the game, but he went out there and performed. Could he have done better with an actual coaching team? Without a doubt, because he's talented. You can't take that away from him. Like, the guy is talented. He's a fighter. He goes in there every time and gives it 110%. But he got it done. So I mean, props to him, and like, I'm glad that he is open to building a team. It's not one of those things where, oh, I'm set on my own for the rest of my career. Like, no, he's just, okay, this is just this one time around. I'm going to build a team, which is going to be potentially top team in Coconut Creek with Joel Romero. So
that's what I hear. So this is going to be a Romero thing, because that's the talk on the street, is that we're going to get Romero.
Well, he wants to fight Till, so he wants to go up in weight class, and he feels that Romero's going to be the best trainer for that.
I'm down. I'm super
Yeah,
down. If
for sure.
Romero happens, that would be a great team up. And why not? I mean, yeah. And no apologies necessary. The truth is, on paper, there are things that put you as a slight underdog in a competition. Like if you're going to train with some real G's, and I'm training with my girlfriend, and all she has is some amateur boxing and then high school experience wrestling, you're going to be like, dude, are you kidding me? You're giving away the fight, right? But I feel like this is one where it's clear as day. You cannot do just a fight camp with a girlfriend. Like, I'm sorry, unless she herself is somebody who actually, is along the lines of, let's say, a Greg Jackson or something like that, or somebody who's any decent coach in the UFC, anybody, right? But no, this girl's got amateur experience at best, and she's coaching this guy. I mean, we're talking what, man? Like, how many years of experience does Perry have compared? I don't know. To me, on paper, the worst and craziest decision you could ever make. There's no shame in that whatsoever, in my opinion. And I don't mean to rant here, but we all thought it. We're laughing like, really, dude, his girlfriend, like. But at the same time, here's what happened that night. Everybody was like, oh shit, here we go. Guy with his girlfriend. Let's see what happens. And then he comes out. And in the first, I know I don't want to sound like a wizard here, but this is the truth. In the first 30 to 40 seconds of the fight, I turned over to my people at home watching, and I go, Perry's on some shit tonight. Mark my words. Win or lose. He was on some shit. No, he was on some shit is what I'm saying. Because I looked at them and I said, 30 seconds in, I can already tell that his movement is very mature. And even if he gets knocked out, and this is literally by the second minute of the fight, I was still talking. I was still like watching, but I was talking. I was saying, he looks really mature. He looks really like he's matured. He's pacing himself. Yeah, he's still crazy, but he's pacing himself. And I feel like these are things that I haven't seen in Perry in a while. Like how to mix being that crazy style of brawler that he is with some kind of rhythmic, technical approach. And I called it 2 minutes in. I go, even if he gets knocked out, I think it's still a win that he's moving this well and taking the fight this intelligently for someone who's got no corner. Let's be real.
No, and you can even argue he might even be a marketing genius, because you talk about social media conversations and everything. Have every interview show out there after, it's who are they talking about? It's Mike Perry. And even before the car, I was like, everyone's talking about Mike Perry because he's bringing his girlfriend. So like, marketing genius, because he got the win and everyone's talking about him. Honestly, Till fights Whitaker in the last card of Fight Island. I kind of want him to lose now, because if Till loses, that just might open the door for Perry now to fight him.
Whoa. You're so right. That'll make it all. That'll make the two routes collide.
It would make sense, yeah.
Because Till's already on a comeback. He's on a comeback streak, right? After he lost to Masvidal, he's gonna kind of have to rebuild his way up. And I think a fight against Whitaker is just the perfect time, because Adesanya is cleaning up division right now in terms of his streak. You got Whitaker, who wants to get the title, but he just lost it, so he can't just go back in and get it. He's fighting Till. If Till loses, who better than the rising star in Mike Perry? I mean, all the attention, all the wins, and it's not just that, man. The way Mike Perry won this fight. Now, I'm sorry, I obsessed over it until the main event. The main event quickly got me over it, but I obsessed over Mike Perry's performance because of how OG it was, man. He really did not just fight the typical Mike Perry fight, although there were some typical Mike Perry moments in this fight. It wasn't a typical Mike Perry fight. And even up until the very end, last moments of the fight, where he was taking him down, he was usually in great grappling control and pacing himself, and he wasn't strong arming anything. He was throwing haymakers when appropriate. He was reserving his energy. He looked rested. His cardio lasted the entire 3 rounds. You're talking about an incredible performance here. And to what credit? My girlfriend. No.
Yeah, because he even said the mindset was all her, in the sense of hearing all the trash talking coming from everywhere, and because of his decision. He said that's all I used. That's all I needed. That's the fuel I needed, because one thing is to talk shit about me, but now you're talking about shit about my girlfriend, who no one knows, who hasn't done anything to anybody. And man, martial arts is a mental game. If that's what it took to put him on that level, it worked.
It worked. And now he got an impressive win. And the truth is, there's a lot of things to look at on this fight, because you have the fact that his girlfriend wasn't saying much when she was in his corner. She wasn't saying much. She was very much, like holding ice to him, and he was just, it was very simple, very simple. Like, where do you want the ice? Put it on the back of my head. Okay.
Yep.
Where do you want it now? Oh, lower neck, no, lower neck, etc. Like, he just, it was a more of a one-way, it was more of a two-way street communication versus a one-way street, right? If anything, you always have corners like dictating the conversation, dictating the thoughts between rounds. Here, Mike Perry was just like in the zone. He didn't need anybody to tell him shit. Everything he was doing was working. He just needed to not give up on the pace, and all he needed to was technically have just someone ice him up. Technically speaking, in some moments in fighting, it's better not to say shit to your fighter. Would you agree?
Well, it's amazing because he's almost like, when you meet someone that's just so, like, they're a mad genius. Like, they're really, really smart, but to a borderline of insanity. Like, he reminded me of that this past weekend because he was saying things that no one ever does, but it makes a lot of sense because he mentioned, man, I was in my corner, and that's all I needed was that zen silence. I don't need coaches yelling in my ear during that 1 minute. I just need to picture the next round in silence and peacefulness. And he says, if my corner's quiet, guess what? I get to hear the other corner's coaches telling him what to do. So you
That's
hear these
true.
things and you're like, damn, Mike Perry might be onto something. Like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's gonna get to the point where, with the whole no audience thing and the fact that it's really quiet in there, I think that we're gonna get this thing where fighters are just gonna be like in their corner, and then the coaches are gonna be like football player coaches. When they're about to call a play, that they're like this, and they're covering their
Yeah.
mouth. The
Yeah,
fucking playbook. All right, here's what you're gonna do, bro. You're gonna fucking
for sure.
like,
No, or I wouldn't even be surprised if I see teams start experimenting with that, like silence in between rounds where, if the game plan is going according to plan, they just go in there, give them water, refresh them, dry them up, and then that's it. Like, no need to say anything. Like, just picture the next round. You know what to do. That's it.
yeah, but there's a mix here. Yeah, there's times when you need coaching. There's times when you don't. Perry didn't need it that night. He was on a roll. He had the other guy's timing. He had his game plan working, and his girlfriend was just there to kind of just tell him to just, the basic shit, breathe.
But think about how many fights we've seen where fighters are clearly dominating. And in between rounds, why do you have to tell them anything? Why plant seeds in their heads that can throw them off? I mean, if I'm a coach and this guy's like just overly winning, I'm not going there. Hey, keep doing what you're doing. Here's some water. Good luck. Bye. No, I'm not gonna be going in there saying, "All right, man, watch out for that right, dude." If he hasn't been getting caught, don't put those seeds in his head because then that's all he's gonna be thinking about, and then he gets caught with something else.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that and you called it last episode, Mike Perry is just the guy you want at your party. He's just crazy outside the box, but at the same time, he might be onto something.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
no,
You
like,
got to.
yeah.
Sometimes unorthodox isn't crazy. It's just unorthodox. It doesn't mean that it has to be crazy. Mike Perry could just be a weird form of unorthodox we haven't seen before. And I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden you have a guy come out next week going, "Yo, just me and my mom. Let's go."
Hey, man, a lot of successful people in any industry is they're successful because they're open to change, and that's what he is. He's open to change. He's not stuck on his ways or any traditional MMA method. He's like, okay, the past has not worked for me. Let's try this.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you 100%. I think that we're going to see some crazy shit coming out now. Maybe culturally, maybe Mike Perry does it again. Who knows?
Dude, if he starts training in top team with Romero, I'm telling you, his wrestling game already with his hard-hitting striking, he might come out as a big player in the division.
We'll see what happens. And finally, last but not least, I cannot avoid talking about this. What do you think? Am I being crazy, overrating this, or was Dan Hooker versus Dustin Poirier one of the best fights you've ever seen? Give it to me. Give it to me straight, bro. Straight.
Yeah, no, amazing. They didn't disappoint at all. Again, one of those fights where I was thinking the whole time it's gonna end any minute. Like, and it could be either of them. There was no real definite winner throughout until the very, very last round. I mean, most people argue that the first two rounds went to Hooker, second went to Poirier, and then Poirier took the last. But it was just beautiful, beautiful boxing, beautiful overall MMA, takedown defense. I mean, it was just, playbook and textbook MMA.
Textbook fight of all time, bro. Look, I'm sorry, I know I keep overrating it. Maybe it's that we haven't had fights in a while, we're just deprived, and when you're hungry, even a cracker can satisfy you in ways that you never thought it could. But the truth is, man, holy shit, we saw a tremendous output from Poirier to the point where he looked tired. I don't know, Poirier's punches were looking so labored at one point, and he caught a second win like 3 times. Not only that, but every time Hooker had him in a compromised position on the ground, we would see Poirier explode to get back to his feet. Man, I don't think people know just how hard it is without any punches being thrown, without anything. After all that happened, just the fact that Poirier was still exploding to get out of certain positions blew my mind away. It just blew me away, man. That was insane. How does he have that gas tank? And then you look at it from a perspective of, well, what makes a good fight? Well, a good fight is a fight that goes back and forth and you don't know how to judge it, or a fight that is so good that you don't even care to judge it. You're watching it and you're just, that's what an amazing fight is. The fight's so good that you don't even think about judging it. Like, oh, I don't know what the fifth round came up and we're all like, anyone's fight. It's 2 rounds apiece easily. And some of the rounds were even hard to call. Some of the rounds you could have given either way almost, I feel like.
Indeed. Yeah, and I think Dustin's endurance was fundamental for the win. Hooker came out exactly how I expected. I mean, I called this fight on Hooker winning it. So seeing those first 2 rounds, I was okay, yeah, his game plan's working. His training has worked. It's definitely a little crisper than Poirier was at the beginning. But I just don't think Hooker was expecting that from Dustin. I don't think he was expecting him to just come out of the 3rd round and be better somehow than the first, which is, very incredibly impressive. And I think that's what won it for him.
And it certainly did, because of the willingness to keep putting out volume, even in the face of the most tired fighter I've seen in a long time. He looked gassed. I mean, not Yoel Romero gassed, but he looked gassed, like in a way that's like, wow, Dustin, we haven't seen you this worked up in a minute. And that's saying a lot, because you had a huge fight against Holloway where you were just putting out a lot of output strikes and throughout the rounds against Holloway, and he didn't look tired. In this fight, he did. And even then, still to the last and final bell, he was going out swinging hard, man. And of course, no, I'm not taking anything away from Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker did amazing. He landed combos. I really do think that Poirier carries a special power, especially after this fight. I mean, we saw that when he fought Holloway, how there was like a certain disparity there. But man, every time Hooker would hit Poirier, yeah, he would hurt him and stuff. But there was something about Poirier's punches that just seemed to stick. I don't know if that's thanks to the more of the traditional boxing technique that he displays. Not 100% sure, but Poirier carries power. And I would like to see him fight, whoever he can next, man. Who do you think's next for him? I don't know, but
he definitely spiced up the division now, because you question. I mean, he beat Gaethje in the past, so I believe if Gaethje wins against Khabib, then yeah, Dustin can go up there and accept the challenge, because it's a win he has. But I feel like if Khabib wins, I don't see Dustin. He's definitely not going to accept the Gaethje fight again. And then we think about McGregor being in the mix as well. I know he says he's retired. I don't buy it. He'll be back. So it really makes you question. I feel like Dana's he's gonna have to be scratching his head on this one, exactly where to position Dustin, because being number 3, winning a fight like this, I mean, if you're smart, you don't take any fight but the championship at this point, because why would I risk that? I did what I had to do. I've beaten everyone in that division except the champion, which is Khabib in this point, assuming he beats Gaethje. So yeah, it's gonna really be weird. I don't know what would happen.
I think that rematch with Gaethje might be a good move, just to see how. Philosophically speaking, I don't know if maybe in terms of matchups and rankings, maybe not. I haven't looked at that too thoroughly, but I do think that philosophically speaking, that rematch would show a lot of both of their maturity. Because think about it, Gaethje just
wins. You mean if Gaethje wins?
Yeah. Let's say. Yeah. No, because right now it's scheduled. Nurmagomedov is going to fight.
Right.
Gaethje, right? That's set in stone, or that at least.
No, it's set in stone. No. If Gaethje wins, like I said, he has to, because he shouldn't fight anyone but the champion. Yeah, right. That's without a doubt. And mentally speaking, he's gonna go in there thinking, okay, I've beaten this guy before. I got a game plan. But again, Gaethje's not the same fighter. But anyways, I think it's gonna be a more of a disturbance if Gaethje loses, because then does Dustin go straight to Khabib, being that the loss that he recently had? And does McGregor decide to step in and complicate things? Because I'm telling you, dude, you present the right fight to Conor, he's coming back. I'm telling you, he doesn't need the money.
The right fight for Conor is Masvidal.
Well, I think he'll be happy with that fight. I'm just saying, McGregor is not going to accept anything that's not like legacy worthy. So right, it would have to be something like Masvidal for a lot of money, or Khabib to not only regain that loss, but to get the title.
Yeah. I agree. And that's why this division is super exciting. And to have these two guys just duke it out like this, man, what a fight. What a fight. I mean, you're talking a fight that had so much on the stand up, and you just can't help but talk about the ground either. Just the attempted omoplata, all the transitions on the ground, the back and forwards, the reversals in position, the way that Poirier kept getting
Reversals
back.
were great.
Oh my God, were they?
Yeah, but if anyone wants to learn how to reverse like off the cage, like, this is the fight to watch.
Yeah, no, I feel like I can learn a thing or two from Poirier. His escapes were really, really, really good. Just out of this world good. And that's what makes a fight great. So if you look at this in terms of, the numbers, it's got incredible numbers. The volume is there. You look at the transitions on the ground, super exciting. You look at a fight that goes back and forth as much as this one did, there. You're looking at a fight. I want to talk about a fight. We're going into the 5th round. It was a tie. Nobody knew who the winner was at that point. It's there. And then you want to talk on top of that, a main event with the implications this one had. You put all those things together. I'm sorry. This is one of the greatest fights I've seen in a long time, if not one of my favorites. I definitely remember it as one of my favorite fights, like a fight that I thoroughly enjoyed because of how much actual MMA we got to see. Real MMA, like mixture between stand-up strikes, the ground game, to standing positions of clinches. The greatest fight. It's in that list. In my opinion, if there's a list of greatest fights that I had to fork over to you overnight, I think I would throw this one in the top 10. I don't know if you feel that way, but that's just
definitely top 10. I don't want to be a downer. I wouldn't give it fight of the year. I still give that to Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Wei Ling, but it's up there. It's easily 2 of the year so far.
The truth is, the problem is I don't have a thing to say because Wei Ling and Jędrzejczyk was a firefight.
Dude, that fight in terms of technique was so crisp.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like watching a video game, like how smooth and crisp all the way through through 5 rounds. Definitely fight of the night, fight of the year. I mean, these guys, yeah, they were there and they competed at an immensely high level. And again, they're definitely top 2. But yeah, you can't forget those females fight, man. That was just something else.
I'm not forgetting, okay? I'm not forgetting it. It's just that they landed so clean, and it was like on the chin.
It's too recent. So it seems I don't know. I don't give it fight of the year.
That's what I'm saying. I am biased because this happens to me a lot. You remember how exciting a fight was? You go show it to your parents or your friends. You're like, oh, watch this fight. I remember it being sick, and then they're all sitting there like, it's all right, and you're like, yeah, it was all right, wasn't it? It wasn't that good. So recency bias, yes, it's there probably. I'll give it to you. But I still stand firm that if I watch it again, I'm gambling I'm gonna like this fight that much because I'm sorry, man, I'm in love with it. I had a great time. I got me to jump out of my seat.
For sure.
My neighbors hated me. I love it when my neighbors get on my ass. It's because the fight was good.
There you go.
But yeah, man. So ESPN, what was that one? 12.
Correct. ESPN 12, Vegas 4.
Vegas 4.
COVID-19.
Set hike. Well, anyway, guys, this is Game On. Thanks a lot for listening. This is the Fight On segment. Raul is always giving you the breakdown. Again, if you guys want more things that we can break down, or you disagree, like I said, like us on Facebook, on Instagram. We are at Game On Sports Podcast. On Twitter, Game On Everyone was our little at. You're listening to AsRaulasitgets and at Studio Z87. I go by DannyMiami on this podcast. So, like, subscribe, leave a comment, ring the bell, tickle the ding dong, do what you got to do. Game On. Thanks so much, Rule, for joining us. Y'all guys have a good night.
All right, take it easy. And remember, keep your hands up.
Hands up.